We're learning new details about the man arrested in connection to an early morning shooting at a bar in New London, Missouri. The Missouri State Highway Patrol identified 21-year-old Gavin Davis as the alleged shooter. He is charged with 2 counts of first-degree assault, 2 counts of armed criminal action, and 1 count of unlawful use of a weapon. They also report that the 2 injured in the shooting have now been released. The Highway Patrol says Davis was causing a disturbance at Tubby's Grub and Pub and was removed. He then returned and fired through the back door, hitting 2 people. Charging documents showed Davis went to his nearby home where he admitted to shooting the gun toward 2 people in his household. He then went to other family members' homes before turning himself into the Marion County Sheriff's Office.